Good day and welcome to British Mirror, where British politics gets held up to the light, the cracks become visible, and suddenly you realize the house you live in might be wobbling. Now imagine waking up one morning, checking the calendar, seeing local elections, rubbing your eyes, and then being told, actually no, not for you, not this year, not in your area, not your turn. As many as 10 million Britons could be denied the chance to vote this May. 10 million. That is not a clerical error. That is not a minor scheduling hiccup. That is a democratic earthquake quietly rumbling under the floorboards. And the most awkward part? The areas hitting the pause button just happen to be places where Reform UK is surging like a rising tide. Coincidence? Or something far more interesting? Stay with me, because this story has everything. Power, panic, postponement, and a growing question about who really controls your ballot box. Quick favor before we push on. If you are enjoying this no-nonsense dive into British politics, hit that subscribe button and click the notifications bell icon. Most viewers have not subscribed yet. It is free, takes a second, and it helps British Mirror keep cutting through the noise. Thank you if you did. Now back to the show. Let us set the scene properly. Across England, 29 councils have either announced delays to their local elections or have not yet formally decided whether they will press ahead. That alone raises eyebrows. But here's where the eyebrow goes fully airborne. 21 of those councils are run by Labour. Just 4 Labour-run authorities have clearly said they will not postpone. 17 are still sitting on the fence, 1 week out from a January 15th deadline. Meanwhile, only 2 Conservative-run councils are delaying, and just 1 Liberal Democrat authority has joined them. That is not a pattern. That is a political fingerprint. Now, before anyone starts shouting conspiracy, let us be fair. It is anticipated that most councils will not delay elections, but 4 Labour-run councils already have. Preston, Chorley, Hinburn, Blackburn with Darwen. If those names ring a bell, it is because they all share something else in common. Reform UK is surging in those areas. Not edging up, not gently climbing, surging. Take Hinburn as a prime example. A recent poll put Reform UK at 39% Labour, sitting in 3rd place on 16% third, in what has traditionally been Labour heartland territory. That is not just a wobble. That is a political equivalent of discovering your smoke alarm is going off because the kitchen is actually on fire. So when Nigel Farage looks at these postponements and smells something fishy, he does not need to sniff very hard. He has accused Labour of postponing votes to save itself from electoral humiliation. He did not mince his words. He called it banana republic behavior. He said Labour is damaging democracy itself. Strong language, yes, but language that lands because the optics are, frankly, dreadful. Let us pause for a moment and talk about trust. Democracy runs on it. You trust that elections will happen when they are meant to happen. You trust that the rules are not changed halfway through the game because one side does not like the scoreline. Once that trust erodes, it does not politely return with an apology note. It fractures, and fractured trust is a habit of reshaping politics in unpredictable ways. Farage has also framed the upcoming local elections as make or break, not just for Reform, but for everyone. He has described May 7th as the single most significant electoral test ahead of the next general election. Double or quits, he called it. Everything on the table. Energy, money, credibility, momentum. Win big, and Reform becomes a permanent force. Bomb, and questions will be asked. He has been brutally honest about the stakes, even admitting that failure would invite scrutiny of his leadership. That honesty, by the way, is something voters often crave, even if they do not always agree with the message. There is something refreshing about a politician saying, this matters, and it could all go wrong. Compare that with the carefully polished reassurances coming from elsewhere, and you begin to see why this story has traction. Meanwhile, the Liberal Democrats are incandescent. Their spokesman has warned that 10 million people could see their democratic right to an election ripped away. Not delayed, not adjusted. Ripped away. They are calling on the government to reverse course entirely and take these proposals off the table. For a party that prides itself on localism and grassroots democracy, this issue cuts straight to the bone. The Conservatives, unsurprisingly, have seized the moment. They accuse Labour of denying democracy and running scared of voters because they know a pasting awaits them at the ballot box. This is politics, so of course they would say that. But again, the accusation sticks because the pattern fits too neatly to ignore. Now let us bring the Prime Minister into the picture. He has denied that the 2026 local elections represent a referendum on his government. He points to his 5-year mandate, secured in 2024, to change the country. He insists that is exactly what he intends to do. From his perspective, local elections are not a verdict on his leadership, just another part of the democratic machinery. But here's the problem. Voters do not always follow the script politicians write for them. They use local elections to send messages, sometimes loud ones, sometimes rude ones, sometimes messages that say, "We are not happy, and this is the only ballot paper we have right now." Trying to pretend that those elections exist in a vacuum is like insisting the weather outside has nothing to do with the storm clouds overhead. The Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government has attempted to cool the temperature. A spokesman dismissed much of the discussion as pointless speculation about a process still far from complete. Less than half of the councils due to hold elections have responded, they point out. Local areas, they argue, are best placed to judge the impact of postponements, particularly where local government reorganization is underway. They also cite precedent. Between 2019 and 2021, elections were postponed in areas undergoing reorganization. All true, all technically correct. And yet, context is everything. Back then, postponements were framed as administrative necessity during a period of structural change and national upheaval. Today, they are unfolding against a backdrop of political anxiety, rising insurgent parties, and a growing sense that the traditional order is under threat. Think of it like this. If a referee stops a football match because the floodlights have failed, everyone understands. If the referee stops the match just as one team is about to score the winning goal, people start asking questions. The rulebook might allow it, but the timing raises suspicion. This is why the reform surge matters so much. Reform is not just picking up protest votes. It is eating into Labour support in places Labour assumed were safe. It is drawing voters who feel ignored, patronized, or simply bored of being told what they should think. And nothing energizes those voters quite like a belief that the system is trying to shut them out. Sir Keir is already struggling with union relations, and now the NEU is about to trigger a massive internecine conflict within the union movement that will inevitably spill into Labour politics. Because here's the uncomfortable reality. The unions fund Labour. They provide money, volunteers, organizational capacity. When unions fight each other, Labour gets caught in the crossfire. When unions pursue aggressive political strategies independent of Labour's direction, it undermines a party's authority and complicates its messaging. An NEU spokesperson stated, with admirable blandness, that the NEU believes all trade unions should work together to ensure every worker in every school is organized and has a union voice. All trade unions should work together. That's a lovely sentiment that completely contradicts the reality of what they're actually doing, which is breaking agreements with other unions and triggering a recruitment war. It's the organizational equivalent of saying we believe in peaceful cooperation while simultaneously launching a military invasion. The cognitive dissonance is spectacular. The NEU was established in 2017 through a merger of two unions, the larger which did not include support staff among its membership. So the current structure of the NEU was specifically designed to exclude support workers from active recruitment. That wasn't an accident or oversight. That was a deliberate structural decision made during merger negotiations to accommodate the concerns of other unions. To address concerns from rival unions worried about member poaching, the NEU committed not to actively recruit support workers, despite inheriting tens of thousands from the smaller union in the merger. So they made a promise, a clear, explicit commitment not to poach members from other unions' traditional recruitment territories. And now they are planning to break that promise because they decided political circumstances require it. A source critical of the plans explained the problem beautifully, stating that solidarity is central to trade unionism. Leaving the TUC will reduce solidarity and reduce the strength of our movement. NEU management's aggressive will to leave is therefore unfathomable. Unfathomable, incomprehensible, inexplicable. This insider, presumably someone with deep roots in the union movement, genuinely cannot understand why the NEU would willingly weaken union solidarity and fracture the movement over this issue. From their perspective, it's self-destructive, counterproductive, and fundamentally at odds with trade union principles. But here's the thing. From Daniel Cabetta's perspective, it probably makes perfect sense. If you genuinely believe Reform UK represents an existential threat to education, to workers' rights, to progressive values generally, then tactical considerations about union solidarity might seem secondary. If you think a Farage government would be so damaging that any action to prevent or undermine it is justified, then breaking a few agreements and antagonizing fellow unions might seem like a price worth paying. It's a classic ends justify the means calculation. The question is whether the threat is actually as severe as they believe, and whether this strategy will actually work. Elsewhere, those in higher education circles have been weighing up what could be expected from a future reform administration. So it's not just the NEU preparing for this possibility. University leadership is also gaming it out. Late last year, it was revealed that top university dons had held meetings with key people within Nigel Farage's party to learn about the possible implications of a reform government. Top university dons. Meeting with reform representatives. That's extraordinary. University leadership engaging directly with a party they presumably have serious concerns about, trying to understand what policies they might face, what threats might emerge, what accommodations might be necessary. This tells you something profound about how seriously institutional Britain is taking the possibility of a reform government. When education unions are planning resistance campaigns and university administrators are holding secret meetings to understand the threat, that's not paranoia. That's institutional risk assessment. That's organizations looking at polling data showing reform at 27%, looking at labor collapsing to 18%, looking at upcoming elections, and thinking we need to prepare for a scenario that seemed impossible a year ago. The really interesting question is whether this strategy will backfire. Union recruitment drives are all well and good, but they require persuading workers that union membership is valuable. That's easier when you're fighting for better pay or working conditions. It's considerably harder when your pitch is essentially join us so we can undermine a political party you might actually support. Because here's the uncomfortable reality the NEU has to grapple with. Some of those 500,000 support workers they're targeting probably voted for reform. Some of them probably agree with reform's policies on immigration, on national identity, on cultural issues. Trying to recruit them into a union explicitly dedicated to undermining the party they support might not go brilliantly.